Hi, Park Ridge. Hope you're having a great week. It's good to come to you in the middle of this week, hopefully with a word of encouragement, maybe a little bit of challenge about how God has called us to live our lives. I do want to remind you that Easter is coming soon, right around the corner, and both our Good Friday service on Friday evening and 2 services on Easter, we anticipate good crowds for those. Please go ahead now and plan on when you're coming and make that a priority. If you're bringing friends, go ahead and invite them and encourage them to be a part of the services that we're going to be having over that weekend. We're super excited about the celebration of the resurrection of Christ, and we look forward to celebrating that together in person as well as online. So thank you for considering that as the day approaches. There's a book that God has used to powerfully and positively affect my life in many ways. It's a little book written by C.S. Lewis many years ago called Mere Christianity. I don't know if you've read it. If you haven't, I strongly encourage it to you. If you're not familiar with C.S. Lewis, I strongly encourage most of his writings to consider and read those. But there's one chapter in the book Mere Christianity called The Great Sin. And I'm only going to read a couple of paragraphs to you to give you an understanding of what this chapter is about and why I believe it's so critical that we understand this theological principle. He writes, "Today I come to that part of Christian morals where they differ most sharply from all other morals. There is one vice of which no man in the world is free, which everyone in the world loathes when he sees it in someone else, and of which hardly any people except Christians ever imagine that they are guilty themselves. I've heard people admit that they are bad-tempered, or that they cannot keep their heads about girls or drink, or even that they are cowards. I do not think I have ever heard anyone who was not a Christian accuse himself of this vice. And at the same time, I have very seldom met anyone who was not a Christian who showed the slightest mercy to it in others. There's no fault which makes a man more unpopular, and no fault which we are more unconscious of in ourselves. And the more we have it ourselves, the more we dislike it in others. The vice I am talking of is pride or self-conceit, and the virtue opposite to it in Christian morals is called humility. You may remember when I was talking about sexual immorality, I warned you that the center of Christian morals did not lie there. Well, now we have come to the center. According to Christian teachers, the essential vice, the utmost evil, is pride. Unchastity, anger, greed, drunkenness, and all that are mere flea bites in comparison. It was through pride that the devil became the devil. Pride leads to every other vice. It is the complete anti-God state of mind." I think that is so true. And I think that we are so easily duped into our sinfulness and selfishness because of the pride, evil pride that resides within us. We want what we want, and we want it now. The Apostle Paul in Romans talks about instead of us being slaves to our pride or slaves to unrighteousness and sin, rather that we can be slaves to righteousness. Romans 6, beginning in verse 15. "What then? Are we to sin because we are not under the law but under grace? By no means. Do you not know that if you present yourselves to anyone as obedient slaves, you are slaves of the one whom you obey, either of sin, which leads to death, or of obedience, which leads to righteousness? But thanks be to God that you who were once slaves of sin have become obedient from the heart to the standard of teaching to which you were committed, and having been set free from sin, have become slaves of righteousness." I don't know if that terminology is exactly the way we might say it with a 21st century vocabulary, but the idea of being enslaved, in a sense, to the righteousness of God lays out a framework that brings health and happiness and holiness and a sense of completion in our lives that we cannot gain in any other way, though our pride and our selfishness lead us to want to fill that gap in ways that only we can understand. So my encouragement on this Wednesday, seek first the things of God. Resist the prideful, selfish tendency that is in all of us, that is in you, and move toward the things of God, that you might be clothed with righteousness, that you might become a slave to righteousness, because the relationship you have with God is so strong and so meaningful. If you have questions about that or any other topic, don't hesitate to reach out, parkridgechurch.com. God bless.